Anyway. Okay. Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. We are now live. Thank you, Dan, downstairs. If everyone could just take a moment to silence their cell phones. If you want to speak on an item on the agenda, please step out into the hall and sign up, and it will show it on our screens, which I better get up on my screen. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, before we get into the consent agenda, I need a motion. I'm going to try to read this, Maggie, whose head I can barely see. I need a motion to amend the consent agenda to amend the 2025-2026 council meeting agenda to 1, delete the April 17th agenda briefing, and 2, delete the April 22 formal meeting. Do I have a motion to amend the consent agenda in such a way?
So moved.
All right. Okay, great. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think we have some voters in the audience. All right. We're now going to consider the consent agenda as amended, except without item E. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda without item E?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and council, somebody who already has the, there it is, public comment. No one is, we have someone, signed up for item E. So we have one person signed up for item E, so why don't we do that after this one? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now do I have a motion to approve item E?
I move to approve item E.
Okay, do I have a second? Are we not approving the slate here?
Second.
Thank you, okay. All right, council, we've just been in a meeting for 2 hours, so we don't even know what's going on. All right, I have one person signed up to speak under this item, and that is Patrick Conant. And as Mr. Conant makes his way forward, I'll just remind speakers you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please watch the lights on the lectern. Green means go, amber means you're almost done, and red means stop. And also, we are in training on the buzzer machine, so forgive.
She's gonna be great.
She's gonna, yeah, it was a little touch and go last time, but, all right.
All right. My name's Patrick Conant, and I'm speaking as the director of Sunshine Labs. We've worked to share information about the downtown bid with our community through the Lift the Lid Off the Bid campaign. First, I do want to recognize that council incorporated language in your bid resolution to emphasize the importance of operating with transparency and in accordance with public records and open meetings laws. However, while the words in a resolution are great, the way our city actually operates this bid matters even more. I'd like to share the council resolution authorizing the bid. As you can see, you outlined a process for appointment of this steering committee. This resolution states plainly that council may accept the proposed slate, or you may request alternate nominees. This choice of words is deliberate. By using may rather than shall, you're indicating the council retains the authority to appoint whoever you choose. This resolution also states that all applications will be made available to city council and the public prior to making appointments. When the council agenda was published, the full list of applications was not included. Instead, a spreadsheet appeared yesterday afternoon with that information. I'm wondering when the city actually received the full list of applications. If the city had these in hand, why weren't they published with the rest of the agenda materials, as your resolution explicitly requires you to do? Transparency means you give residents enough time to actually review the materials. If the city received these applications more recently, then I'm wondering if council was even able to review the full list of candidates before placing the approval of the slate on the consent agenda. I'm concerned by council's hands-off approach to the bid steering committee. When council wrote this resolution, you gave yourselves a duty to participate in the appointment process. Instead, this item is listed on the consent agenda with no presentation from staff or discussion by council members. I find it odd that council is handling this process differently from the way you appoint residents to other boards. I've seen council put real thought into evaluating candidates for our advisory boards. Why are we putting less effort towards ensuring this steering committee adequately represents our city, especially considering this body is tasked with administering over $1 million in tax funds? If this is an indication of the way council intends to operate the bid, rubber stamping the operator's selections, then public concerns that this body is insulated from oversight or feedback, even from our elected officials, is true. Council should pause, take the time to fully review the applications submitted, and develop a process to appoint the strongest possible group to this steering committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good work. Yeah, it went out, the light went out. Okay, council, we have a motion and a second.
I do have a comment, if I may.
Yes, please, please.
The nomination of the Asheville Downtown Association District Board was originally under unfinished business, but after our agenda briefing, it was moved to the consent agenda, so that's why I asked to pull it, to be able to hear concerns and better inform myself. Today, I want to name gratitude for Vice Mayor Mosley, who will represent council in the non-voting seat, to the 50 applicants who are willing to serve in this new role, and to the 20 nominees who are anticipated to carry this work forward. We have serious issues in downtown, a neighborhood that is also the economic engine and resource hub for our city. Issues including behavioral health crises, homelessness, substance use and poisoning, among the highest bike and pedestrian crash accidents in the state per capita, and economic recovery for Helene as a top priority for our small and local businesses. Additionally, I'm hearing concern from multiple members of the ADA board that they did not have a chance to review the slate and the process. So to maintain consistency with my concern that a business improvement district is not the right tool for the serious issues we face, I will not be voting to advance the board today. But I remain hopeful that our deep care about our downtown will one day result in finding funding to match the tools that we do need. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, if not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the consent agenda. Now on for exciting presentations and reports. The first item is a replacement of the Metropolitan Sewage District's Carrier Bridge Pump Station. And we've got an MST team here. We're gonna have Hunter Carson make this presentation. You all are welcome to come on up or sit or stand or however you wanna do it, or just. Okay, yes, if they're tech. And I think we're doing 15 minutes, yes, on this one. We time even our invited speakers, so.
Well, I was told 10,
So you're welcome, so
I'm
welcome. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all for having me. I'm Hunter Carson, the Director of Engineering at Metropolitan Sewage District, and here today to talk about the Carrier Bridge Pump Station Replacement Project. It does impact you all because this project will be constructed through 2 city parks, and then the pump station itself will be constructed adjacent to the French Broad River Park. So a little bit of background about the project and the pump station. Carrier Bridge Pump Station is our largest sewer pump station in the collection system. It services approximately half of our entire collection system service area. And that's what this, the picture on the right shows you. All of the highlighted area is portions of the collection system that are served by Carrier Bridge Pump Station. So as you can see, everything very large portions of South Buncombe, West Buncombe, and even North Henderson County are serviced by this pump station. So that said, the reliable operation and proper sizing of this replacement is critical to this pump station. It is an old station currently that's being replaced. It's about 60 years old now, and it will be increased capacity-wise from 22 million gallons per day to a peak flow capacity of 40 million gallons per day. And so that's based on a 2070 flow projection. So this is an aerial image taken a couple weeks ago. You can see the French Broad River Park, which is close to the confluence of the Swannanoa and French Broad Rivers. We do have an existing Carrier Bridge pump station, which you can see in the foreground there, sort of sits up on a hill just over the French Broad River Park. And then the site of the new pump station will be just to the north of that. That's a parcel that MSD purchased from Duke Energy about 4 or 5 years ago, specifically for this project.
Can I just interject? So point of
yes.
reference. So to the top of this frame would be where our old dog park was.
Correct.
Well, old just as of Helene.
Yep.
And the site where you have highlighted, I was just walking there Sunday, and several trees have been removed. And I think, we heard some feedback in the community, a lot of confusion about why trees are being removed. Thus, you're here tonight to talk to us about this project, to sort of clear up some of that information. Thank you.
Yeah, so the highlighted portion, as you saw on your walk, has been cleared, and that is the location for the pump station itself. A few other slides later in the deck will show some of the clearing that was done by MSD. I think it was relatively minimal compared to the clearing that took place by the Army Corps, but I will show those photos. So just a high-level scope of work for this project. Again, a 40 million gallon per day wastewater pump station. It'll have complete odor control system. So those are the two cylindrical units in the back of the station there. Those will be carbon scrubbers. This is a very deep station. It'll be a very large excavation adjacent to the French Broad River Park, about 70 feet deep. The station itself will have a footprint of about 100 feet wide or 100 feet long by 40 feet wide. A couple retaining walls, and then there will also be some piping associated with this project, both on the inlet side and the outlet side, or the discharge side of the pump station. There will also be 2 river crossings where we'll be installing new piping across the French Broad River. And also on the east side, adjacent to Lyman Street, we'll be rehabilitating about 2,000 feet of existing 54-inch sewer pipe. And so all that will hopefully be done at a cost of about $105 million. Just a couple architectural renderings here. On the right is a rendering of what we expect to see from the park side. So that's a east elevation view. Top left there would be a west elevation view where you again see those carbon scrubber, the odor control system. Again, an east elevation view. This is just to kind of represent how much infrastructure is actually below grade. Again, this is a 70-foot deep pump station. On the lower left is a 60-inch inlet pipe, so that's the wastewater coming into the station. And then on the right there, the 2 36-inch force mains, or those are the pressurized discharge pipes leaving the pump station. As far as the 60-inch pipe coming into the station, we have worked with city staff on aligning these lines through the park. So the red alignment there is what we expect to install. So that will be installed underneath Amboy Road, and then we will be open cutting a section through the park to the proposed pump station site. And so a group of us, we did visit the park post-Helene. Obviously, there were a lot of trees down after the hurricane, and so we didn't want to intentionally take down more, so we have come up with these alignments to save as many trees as possible. Also, these alignments preserve some of the park structures there, the gazebo being one, and then the bathroom facility. So we do intend to preserve both of those. As far as the discharge side of the pump station, again, these are the pressurized force mains that leave the pump station. Again, we worked with city staff on coming up with these alignments. We actually shifted the pipes further towards the river because there was major tree loss post-hurricane. And so we think we've accomplished that. We had to take down very few trees for this alignment. But this is one of the 2 river crossings that I mentioned. The force mains will cross the river and tie into existing infrastructure on the east side of the river. So as far as those 2 river crossings, they will be what we refer to as an open cut. And so in the next, I'll show you how that's done in the next slide, but 2 river crossings associated with this project, one at the French Broad River Park, which I just showed in the last slide. The second river crossing will take place at Carrier Park, just to the west of the velodrome that you see there in that image to the right.
These are under the river, though.
They will be buried, but yes. And so both of those will be installed using a cofferdam. And so the image on the right is actually from Woodfin. If anybody has passed by that area, you've probably seen this in the river, but that has been constructed for the town of Woodfin's Taylor's Wave. Go ahead.
That's just an example of how you do the construction to.
Correct.
Do you know how deep, I think Councilwoman was asking,
Yeah.
how deep the pipe, you have other river crossings currently, don't you, that exist in the city?
Yeah. Yes, so these pipes will be, the 60-inch pipe, it's a 5-foot diameter pipe. We'll have, I think, roughly 3 to 5 feet of coverage, so that's how deep it will be buried under the base of the river, and then it will be concrete encased.
I feel like many in our community are very familiar with one pipe that was underground coming out of our water treatment plant, and we're
Sure.
fixing that with a concrete casing, so that
Yes.
sounds like a resilient strategy. Is that gonna be deep enough? Like, do we know, what type of
Well, we
flood
do.
resilience estimates, what type of flood maps are you using to ensure that that is deep enough?
So we do have our consultant here, which
Yeah.
maybe he can help me answer some technical questions, but we
Sure.
do intend to excavate down to bedrock and basically anchor into that bedrock and then concrete encase.
So the case will get anchored into the
Anchored
bedrock
into bedrock.
force.
Yes.
You said that you have other pipes that cross under the river and other places. How did they fare in the hurricane?
We did have some creek crossings blown out, not many. Most of our creek crossings that did fail during the hurricane were aerial. So those obviously are above, they're above the water. As the rivers or creeks rose, they took those out, probably a handful of those. To be honest, I think I can only think of 2 subaqueous crossings that did fail during the hurricane. But again, they weren't to this level of construction to where they were anchored into bedrock.
So
60
this
inches
is
huge.
this is such a big part of our sewerage system.
Yes.
And one does wonder, were there damages to the way it was or is currently constructed?
That's a good question. So the current pump station is sited, again, it's sort of up on a knoll over the French Broad River Park, but it is sited at 2 feet above the FEMA 500-year floodplain. And so the new, and so to answer your question, floodwaters did get very close to it, but it did not inundate the pump station itself. Didn't get into the electrical controls or anything. So we were able to operate that station. The new station will be sited at that same elevation. So we don't anticipate damage.
So because we now see, like on slide 7, the pipes being moved closer to the river does give me some pause, because if we know that we had a historic flood, even though it does flood here every 20 years or so, this held. And so it does make me wonder, why are we putting funds into this infrastructure instead of maybe redundancy at another location? Has that been considered at all?
Well, so this is kind of the heart of our entire collection system here. So we can't easily relocate this pump station if that's kind of what you're asking.
Well, I know, for example, if this heart was working, should we build like a backup heart somewhere else instead of moving our heart into what appears to be, from the limitations of my eyes, I'm not a professional in this, into closer harm's way? I know when I first joined council, we were talking about one of those aerial crossovers and maybe building a pedestrian bridge on top. That was back when Gwen was at the table. So we don't know what that would have looked like and if it could have been damaged, but this one, it sounds like wasn't.
Yeah, we were considering a pedestrian bridge early on. Internally, we had a lot of questions and concerns about the operational and maintenance aspect of that. So yes, we've gone back to a subaqueous crossing.
Well, I don't know what our role is on council as far as registering concern, but without more information, I definitely have concern about this being changed without understanding how it makes it more resilient and safer.
Hold, you'll have to come up to the microphone because this is all being streamed, and maybe it'll help if you get through the whole presentation, but if you want to add something.
Well, I just wanted to say, we had survey done post-storm, and it showed no major elevation change to the river. So we feel very certain that this pipe will be protected even if there was another storm similar to the past.
Thanks.
That's Darren Prosser with MSD.
So just real quickly, I'll go through, so the intent is to install these crossings with a cofferdam, which you see here. This is a riprap cofferdam that's been installed in the town of Woodfin. So essentially you are creating this horseshoe pattern, if you will, out into the river. By about 55%, you're installing half of your pipe in the dry, so you're actually dewatering the area inside that cofferdam. Then you have to remove the cofferdam, install it on the other side of the river, and complete the remaining 50% of your pipe and hook those together. So that would be the intent, both at the French Broad River Park and upstream at Carrier Park. So this is just an overall summary map of the whole project. The majority of the work is happening close to the French Broad River Park, and I know it's difficult to see, but the purple line on the east side of the river, that is the 2,000-foot section of 54-inch existing pipe that we intend to rehabilitate. And so in order to do that, there will be bypass pumping and pipes set up. And because of that, portions of the Rad Tip Greenway will need to be closed temporarily to do that work. The sort of dashed site.
I don't know why we give you time limits, because we need you to tell us all the rest of this.
Okay.
I think we're gonna need to let him finish the whole presentation.
The dashed cyan line just shows an actual future project, but it shows you connection between those two river crossings. So we can all agree that the Hurricane Helene greatly impacted both of these parks. Very shortly after the hurricane, we were in touch with city staff, and have been coordinating with them to try and expedite construction, especially in and around the river where this park was so greatly damaged. So we formalized this agreement in a memorandum of understanding with the city in late February. Just a few images post-Helene. This is when staff was out there walking and looking at alternative alignments to minimize some of the tree loss. So this is the park as of 2 weeks ago. You can see it's pretty much a blank canvas out there. We feel that this is kind of the opportune time to do this project prior to any major restoration efforts by the city. And so hopefully we can get this underway. Just to give you an area of reference, the crossing, the northern crossing, would occur where that red line is. The pump station would be in the foreground of the picture where the clearing has already occurred for the station. Similar photo over at Carrier Park. You can see the velodrome, obviously, and the upstream crossing would take place in that location. Construction schedule. So these are, even though they are certainly tied together, we bid these two projects independently. So the river crossing has already been bid. We've already issued a notice of award to the contractor. We expect that construction to begin this summer and take approximately 1.5 years to complete. Final design is now being completed on the pipelines and the pump station itself, and we intend to advertise that later this month and award that contract in the middle of July. Once the contract administration period is up and we actually get mobilized on site, we're thinking the pipelines will take about 2 years to construct and the pump station about 3 years to construct, which will take us into 2029. So that is all I have right now. So entertain any questions you might have.
For the $105 million cost of the project, where does the funding stack come from?
So that's both PAYGO and bonds.
It's ratepayers funded through
Yes. Yeah.
We have all kinds of different revenue situations. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming tonight. I thought it was a good idea since we're learning more about what's going to be happening in these parks and their redevelopment.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a second presentation tonight. We're resetting the shot clock to 15 minutes. And this is from the Boards and Commissions Realignment Working Group. And I know Elise Martyr is going to make the presentation. But if you are a member of this group and you're here, you want to stand so we can recognize you, please. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elise Martyr, and I'm here on behalf of the Boards and Commissions Realignment Working Group. We are a volunteer team tasked with developing recommendations to improve the city's advisory board system. Now, specifically, our work focuses on volunteer advisory boards, not quasi-judicial boards. And throughout the presentation, I am going to use the term boards as like a shorthand for boards, commissions, committees, etc. So, of course, how do we get here? The Realignment Working Group, or RWG for short, formed in 2022 in response to a staff-led proposal to radically reduce the number of boards and to align the remaining boards with a relevant council committee. And as a working group, we conducted and reported findings from a survey of current and former board members and then presented those survey findings to the Boards and Commissions Council Committee as well as to full council, and that was last January. And since then, we conducted a survey of staff liaisons and we have prepared a report detailing our 28 recommendations. The main themes of those recommendations include goal setting, board review, communicating with council, technology, training, representation and participation, and board management. Our recommendations place special focus on formalization and consistency of policy. So to implement these recommendations and ensure greater consistency, we recommend centralizing operational support. Here we've just got a little timeline showing some of those milestones I mentioned, but let's jump right into the recommendations because I have very little time. So if you recall from our previous presentation, the membership survey found that board members had a more positive experience when their board's goals were aligned with council priorities. However, the survey also revealed that goals were more often set by board members with a lot less input from council. Nearly 70% of respondents indicated that board members were involved in goal setting, but only 35% of respondents said that council members were involved in goal setting. So it's like a 2-to-1 ratio. So to address this, we recommend that council reviews each board's annual goals and confirms that all board goals are aligned with council priorities set during the annual council retreat. And then to require approval by council for any goals that are not directly tied to a council priority. And these reviews could also be conducted by the relevant council committee, not necessarily all of council. But implementing these recommendations will help align board goals with council work plans and will allow members to see a clearer connection between their efforts and council action. Now, the main criticism of the initial staff proposal was the drastic reduction in the number of boards from 20 to more like 4 or 5. And it's certainly true that community needs evolve and that the city needs a system that can adapt to those changing needs. Now, currently, the annual report process is not really a strong enough tool to assess a board's effectiveness or ongoing value. But a regular review process would provide a mechanism to ensure that boards are in alignment with council goals and also to evaluate their effectiveness in pursuing their mission. So we recommend that the city establish a formal board review process. And we outline some components that could be included in the review process in our report. And we also encourage the city to include data-driven performance metrics when appropriate to do so. Now, importantly, a review does not automatically mean dissolution. There are a number of potential outcomes short of disbanding a board. But if dissolution is on the table, it should follow a formal and transparent process with opportunities for engagement from current and former members and the public. And the key here is that any review or dissolution process should be standard, transparent, comprehensive, and fair, and not a sweeping reduction by 75 or 80% as originally proposed. Now, in the open-ended survey responses, many members expressed feeling that their recommendations were ignored or led to no action, and this ultimately contributed to an overall sense of powerlessness or lack of impact. And in fact, staff members also expressed frustration with the lack of formal process regarding elevating recommendations to council. So to address this, we recommend that the city implement a formal process by which recommendations are elevated to council after an initial review by a council committee. And this formal process should include the creation of a publicly accessible database that contains a list of all recommendations issued by any board and their status within the process. These measures will help ensure that recommendations don't just disappear into the void and that members feel heard, and that there's a clear feedback mechanism to explain why a recommendation may not be pursued or acted upon. It's also important that boards have a platform to share their progress, successes, and challenges with council, staff, and the public. And while boards do submit an annual report summarizing their work from the previous calendar year, it doesn't offer a meaningful opportunity for members to reflect on or fully share the impact of their contributions. So we recommend that the city develop a culture and process that encourages boards to regularly present to council committees and provides a pathway to make presentations to full council. Now, with regard to recruitment and representation, if you recall, the responses to demographic questions from our member survey revealed underrepresentation from Black residents, those younger than 35, and those without a 4-year college degree. And our report and earlier presentation do provide some additional context as to why that might be the case. But to help address these disparities, we recommend that the city implement a menu of accommodations and compensation for volunteer advisory board members. These could include things like providing stipends, childcare, translation services, and meeting materials in alternate formats. And by providing these types of accommodations and compensation, this could reduce barriers and make it possible for more people to participate. As I said, the 2022 staff proposal suggested reducing the number of official boards while also proliferating working groups. And one rationale for this reduction was to reduce the burden on staff by not having to provide as much support to working groups. Though some members of the public did express considerable concern that this change in structure could be used to circumvent open meetings law by not recognizing the working groups as official public bodies. However, through our research, we found that any public body exercising advisory functions is subject to open meetings law, and that is regardless of whether they're called a working group or a task force or a subcommittee. So if the city were to implement working groups as a structure within the city without providing any other guidelines, this could lead to ambiguity with regard to the legal requirements. So we recommend that the city create a clear and consistent policy establishing formal boards, subcommittees, and task forces, and informal groups that we have dubbed discussion groups. And this emphasizes that the role of these groups is to explore topics more deeply, engage with non-members, and report back to the full membership. But their role is not to provide policy recommendations. There are still some members of our group who have serious concerns about transparency, but we recognize the value of board members working in smaller groups on specific topics. And if the city is going to move forward with such a structure, it must establish a clear policy that aligns with state law. And our report lays out in greater detail what such a policy could look like. Now, I do want to acknowledge that we were designated as a working group, though we didn't pick that for ourselves. And in practice, our role and approach has really been more in line with that of a task force. Now, of course, as I'm sure you all know, all boards were placed on hold in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. And further, the Recreation Board and the Citizens Police Advisory Committee have not met since March of 2020, when all boards were placed on hold due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We recommend prioritizing efforts to restart all boards, including the Recreation Board and CPAC, as soon as possible. And as you resume these boards, we urge you to take the opportunity to implement our recommendations around goal setting, given that the focus areas are very clear and narrow right now. And we also support the establishment of a water advisory board as recommended by the Water Outage Independent Review Board, which, if you recall, was formed after the water outage a couple of winters ago. Though the more recent catastrophic outage further underscores the urgent need for such a board in our community. And as this new board is established, we strongly encourage city leadership to carefully craft the establishing ordinance to ensure that the Water Advisory Board has a clear mission, scope, and charge right from the outset. And the last recommendation I'll highlight today addresses a common theme. The respondents to both the member and staff liaison surveys indicated a lack of consistency in board practices, the absence of formalized procedures, and confusion over the role boards play in shaping policy. To address this, we recommend centralizing staff support for boards into one coordinating body, which will, among other things, coordinate the board review process, ensure each board has a clear mission and goals, foster communication between the board and council, and provide technical and operational support to city staff, especially with regard to technology issues and procedures for advancing board recommendations. Now, our recommendation is to centralize the logistical support for board operations, but not to replace the departmental staff liaisons who serve as subject matter experts. The goal is to better define points of contact for questions about board roles and to assign clear ownership for the systems and processes that we've proposed. And in all likelihood, the centralized support would come from the clerk's office. Here I have a summary of those key recommendations that I shared with you today, but as a reminder, there are 28 recommendations in the full report. And just some final thoughts. Our work was nearly complete when the hurricane struck our community. And at that time, we were preparing to present our recommendations to the Boards and Commissions Council Committee in early October. So we were like right there at the end. So it's important to note that our recommendations were developed in a different context before the city's priorities shifted. However, the current storm recovery framework presents a great opportunity to implement our recommendations. I attended the February 4th listening session with board officers, and there was a recurring theme that board members are eager to get to work. And this moment presents a clear opportunity for council to directly hand down goals that are in alignment with storm recovery efforts. At the same time, our group deeply respects the time and capacity of city staff, and we recognize that those resources are stretched very thin right now. But we believe that some of those pressures could be alleviated by developing consistent policies and tools which will facilitate and empower boards to work with a reduced level of staff support while still adhering to state laws regarding transparency and public access. And we feel that our work showcases some of these recommendations put into action. We were given a clear directive to provide recommendations for improving the city's advisory board system, and we were empowered to do the work. And along the way, we had periodic check-ins with city staff and council members to provide feedback, which helped guide our direction and affirmed that our work was supported and valued. And because our charge came directly from council, we now have the opportunity to present our recommendations directly to you with optimism that they will be thoughtfully considered and acted upon. And we accomplished all of this with minimal staff support while fully complying with the legal requirements for public meetings. And I just want to thank you for your time this evening. We hope that our recommendations provide insight for improving the city's advisory board system. And I want to acknowledge the incredible effort of those individuals who contributed to this work. And I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Well, first, let's just say thank you so much, and you did almost perfectly timed your presentation.
Yes.
Very good. And thank you all to your whole group that is here tonight for all your work and dedication to this. It's obviously been a long process and a lot of time and energy put into it, so thank you very much.
I do have a question for staff. We've kind of brought this up in the pre-meetings. We have so much work to do, and we have so many willing hands to share that work. I did attend, along with my colleagues, the board officer meeting that Elise mentioned. Do we have a schedule or a plan for follow-up?
There is, and I apologize for not having that exact date. I believe our
Yes, we don't,
I think it's in May,
Okay.
but there will be a
Looks
follow-up
like Ben knows.
meeting. Ben, you've got
if
it?
you know the
Okay, I don't
date.
have a day, but yes, good evening, Councilman Rowley, and thank you for the question. Yes, we actually used Fountain Works, our consultant that did your retreat. They did the first Boards and Commissions work session. We actually meet with them tomorrow to begin planning and setting a date for that follow-up meeting. So I don't have a date, but Ms. Campbell, you're right, it'll be late April, early May, but we're gonna hopefully be able to kind of get that planned and have that out to these chairs and vice chairs very soon. But yes, we fully intend to have a follow-up session.
And then, of course, there's the infrastructure part. Another report mentions the Boards and Commissions Committee. My understanding from the way we're structuring our council committees is that the work of boards and commissions is going to fall under a new council committee that will be policy, finance, infrastructure, boards and committees, equity, and we'll essentially meet like a third council meeting where we don't vote, right? Once a month.
Correct.
So that might be a little bit of a change in expectation, but thank you so much for your work and the work of our neighbors that are here and those watching at home.
Thank you.
I'll add too that it'd be great if y'all want to come to that meeting that we're scheduling in May, because I do think that in that first meeting of the co-chairs of existing boards and commissions, they were bringing up restructuring ideas, they were bringing up goals and council collaboration ideas, and so at a minimum, we want them to see this report, but y'all being engaged or a resource in that would be helpful, because as is reflected here, right, you surveyed and pulsed that and kind of came back with recommendations, but collaboration, if you have it in you to stick around a little longer I think that there's some time where I'm hoping to look to those co-chairs to say, what do we want to do next, and get some recommendations on that, so it'd be great for y'all to continue serving that way.
We did have a few folks who attended the listening
Yeah.
session, and I think we were all invited to attend. There were just only maybe 3 of us who were able to.
Sure.
But we do intend to keep meeting and to follow up. I know we'll have a meeting with Maggie and the other members of the clerk's office to discuss some things, so we do intend to follow up.
Yeah, I think a lot of these recommendations would just richen the process and add so much value, and just appreciate all the work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the one public hearing item we have tonight, which is an exciting topic of permanently closing an unopened right-of-way, but everyone is welcome to stay for all of this, or make your quiet exit at this moment. Jessica Morris is here to tell us about permanently close a portion of an unopened right-of-way.
Thank you. Jessica Morris, Assistant Director of Transportation. This is a right-of-way closure petition from Nicholson and Son on behalf of the property owner. And I'll show you a map, but this is in the area of Brevard Road and Coventry Circle. The unopened right-of-way connects to Morningside Drive. However, it is only the southernmost portion of the right-of-way that we are speaking to this evening. The orange line is the proposed right-of-way closure, and you can see Morningside Drive to the north. The unopened right-of-way continues kind of around a couple of parcels and connects to Morningside Drive. The red outline is the property that is owned by the applicant, and this right-of-way closure would facilitate their ability to combine the parcel and then subdivide. And this is the proposed plat for the ultimate subdivision that's being proposed associated with this right-of-way closure. The Technical Review Committee met in December and reviewed this request, and the recommendation was to approve the closure. The Multimodal Transportation Commission typically weighs in on these right-of-way requests, right-of-way closure requests. However, given that the boards and commissions are on a pause, the MMTC did not review this request. However, it's not legally required to be done. So the proposed motion is to permanently close a portion of an unopened right-of-way connected to Morningside Drive, located between all of those nines, Coventry Circle and Brevard Road. Thank you. I can answer any questions, and we also have the applicant here if you have any questions for them.
As a MMTC member, I'm going to channel some of the teammates, or as a liaison to it, talk to me about the gap plan and greenways and future plans. We know that to expand our multimodal infrastructure, it takes a long time, so we map stuff out and then we work overtime on the infrastructure. Is there any connectivity with this area in future plans or anticipated multimodal enhancements?
No, not in this area. So part of the TRC review includes transportation as well as other departments that are looking for any opportunities there for connectivity, whether it be for transportation or utilities. So TRC does a very thorough review of that against all of our plans.
Thanks. I make a motion.
Oh, we got to open the public hearing,
All right.
but I need to
There's
get to
no
my, there's nobody. I'm going to open the public hearing and close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
Motion to permanently close a portion of an unopened right-of-way connected to Morningside Drive located between, what is that? 99,999 Coventry Circle. Do I have to read all those numbers, Brad? And Brevard Road, as stated in the staff report.
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That is the end of our public hearings agenda. We have no unfinished business tonight. We have some items of new business. The first is a resolution authorizing the city staff to submit the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan. That is the CDBG-DR action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and James Shelton, who's gonna want to stop talking about this one day, but is gonna talk about
It's
this
gonna be for 6
again,
years.
for the 100th time, and doing a great job at it.
Thank you. You're right, it is 6 years that we have to spend these funds down from the time that we get our grant allocation in place. I want to lead off tonight with gratitude. Gratitude for all of the city staff. I get to be the one who's lucky enough to stand in front of y'all tonight and give this presentation, but I'm just one guy. There was a ton of city staff that were involved in this effort to put this plan together. I just want to thank everybody that participated in that process to have this come to you before y'all tonight, as well as our consultants, Haggerty, who helped us get this plan together. We could not have done this without the additional help. So I just want to express my gratitude to them. And I also want to express my gratitude to our community members. I see some familiar faces in the crowd tonight who participated in our community input sessions and our feedback sessions. This has been the most collaborative effort I have ever been a part of. And I'm so happy to be in front of y'all tonight to ask y'all's approval of this plan. Since Helene, we have worked to access lots of different resources from FEMA, the state of North Carolina, and others for long-term recovery. Back in January, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, announced that we would receive a grant through the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program for $225,010,000. To access those funds, we have to submit an action plan to HUD that outlines our community's ongoing unmet needs as a result of the storm and describes how the city intends to use the funding for those unmet needs. A robust community engagement process informed this plan. Back in February, we underwent a community input process where we received over 300 direct comments throughout that process, and each comment has been responded to and included as an appendix to the plan. That's actually the comments we received as a part of public feedback here in this last portion, just to correct that. The final allocations in the plan, as well as programmatic language, have been adjusted to reflect these comments, and the feedback received will further inform the implementation, not just the plan that we bring before you tonight, but how we go about implementing this plan over the next 6 years is informed by the feedback we heard from our community. So tonight, we're asking y'all for your authorization to submit this plan to HUD for their approval. We know that the best practice with these types of programs is to be intentional and strategic, with a focus on early wins, planning, and long-term resilience. And just a reminder that the plan before you tonight is not the last time I'll be here talking about this. Y'all know I love talking about it, but we will be back with changes. We will be back with amendments as we get more information, as we learn more about our recovery in this disaster. We will be back to amend this plan. This plan also is intended to work in concert with other recovery resources like the state of North Carolina's CDBG-DR plan, which received $1.4 billion with a specific focus on their housing programs. Once this plan is submitted for approval, we will then begin planning our implementation. That's already begun now. We've already started this planning of how we're going to go about activating these funds for our community, for their recovery. So it's been a process. Back in January, we received the notification that we would receive these funds, and then we kicked off a community engagement process in February to start getting community input on what our ongoing unmet needs are as a result of the storm. We then engaged with council as well, and in March, we published a draft plan and had 3 community feedback sessions. We also launched an online feedback portal where we received a ton of comments. We'll talk more specifically about the feedback that we got later. And here we are tonight. We've incorporated that feedback. We've made changes according to the recommendations our community has given us, as well as the recommendations for changes we've heard from y'all. And tonight we ask for your approval to submit that to HUD for their review. Once they have it in their hands, we'll have 45 days. They'll have 45 days to review it and request changes, and then approve the plan within 45 days. And we expect to be able to receive a grant agreement this summer and start implementing projects later this year. Back in February, we also had a community priorities survey focused on Helene recovery. We heard that infrastructure, housing solutions, economic recovery, food security, and sustainability were a key focus for our community. This was not specifically focused just on our CDBG-DR program, but has helped to inform our overall recovery. And I believe y'all discussed this at your retreat a few weeks ago. So during our 6 input sessions in February, we got 623 direct comments from our community, and the key things we heard around infrastructure were focused on parks, water system resilience, roads, and enhancing public spaces. As well as in economic revitalization, a key thing that we heard was support for small businesses and economic diversification. And then in affordable housing, a need to restore and build new housing units in our community. On March 4th, y'all remember we marched forth together, right? We launched our public comment period on our draft plan, and we received public comment for 30 days from March 4th to April 3rd and held 3 public feedback sessions, each focused on a portion of our plan, but we received comment on the entirety of the plan in each of those. Each was focused on housing, economic revitalization, and infrastructure. We received comments in person, responded to them there, but we also got comments online and via email too. All of the comments that we received were responded to and are attached to the plan. I brought a copy of it with me tonight. Pretty much half of this binder is public comment. If you look at our plan online, it is public comment and our responses to it. So this has been a robust process where our community has been involved, and it's been great to hear their input and for us to be able to respond to that. And Deborah, I'll have this for you to sign tomorrow morning if this goes the way.
Yes, sir.
So, public comment period, we had over 105 people. I see y'all tonight. Some of y'all are here. 105 folks attended the 3 public feedback sessions. 220 people participated online or via email. And that's not necessarily just including all of the joint signatory comments that we received. We received several comments from organizations with over 100 signatories to them. So we received a ton of comments, as well as from organizations with lots of folks signing on to them. And we received over 350 total comments over the 30-day period, which, by the way, is 150 more than the state got on their plan, just to let you know. We're just one little city, right? They were doing the whole disaster area. So, just saying. And this is a sample. This is not all of the organizations that necessarily participated in the process, but this is just a sampling of all the different types of folks and different organizations representing our community that we heard from. You can find it in the plan as well. So, I want to mention quickly our alignment with the state of North Carolina's DR program. I don't want to dwell too long on this, but as part of our planning process and the types of programs we're intending to fund, we have to take into the context of other resources that have come to light, as well as what types of resources the state is bringing to the table. When we met with HUD back in February, we had a light launch with them to talk about this program. And when we discussed our coordination with the state, they said it's great to see this kind of coordination. They don't typically see a city of our size and a state each with their own grants through this program working so closely together. So they were actually quite happy to see that, and they said we were in great shape in those terms. Don't want to spend too much time here, but this is the state's of North Carolina's program. Again, it's a $1.4 billion program. It is heavy on housing. $1.1 billion is going to housing out of their program. Their unmet needs assessment came to a very different conclusion than ours did, because the disaster that happened across Western North Carolina in its entirety is very different than the disaster that happened in the city of Asheville. And our plans reflect that difference. So the types of programs that we're intending to fund look very different than what the state is intending to fund. And just another focus again on housing, they're proposing an $807 million program to do reconstruction and rehabilitation of owner-occupied units. You'll see in a minute that we have every intention of partnering with them. We've set funds aside in our plan for them to run that program for homeowner rehab and reconstruction in the city of Asheville. They'll take care of all the administration and we'll front the hard costs. And then they also have some fairly sizable multifamily construction and workforce housing for home ownership as well. That's new development, and aside from rehabilitation. So, based upon our unmet needs and the context of other resources, this was our draft proposal. This is what came out back on March 4th. This was our beginning point before we went out for public feedback after to hear, did we get this right? What did we miss? As you see, we're heavy on infrastructure with a bigger funding for economic revitalization, and then a sizable but not, relatively very big investment in housing. HUD typically expects our percent of allocation in that far right column to loosely align with the percent of need column. Our percent of need should inform how much of our grant we're allocating toward our programs, with some wiggle room. They're the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so they're quite okay with us putting a little bit more emphasis on housing, as well as taking into context our pre-storm conditions, as well as council priorities and our community's priorities as well. Speaking of community priorities, what we heard was we needed to fund a little bit more toward different programs. So we've reallocated $5 million from our original infrastructure allocation and distributed that to 3 different places. We added $2 million to the Small Business Support Program, which will provide grants or loans to small businesses to help with recovery. We've added $1 million to planning that will help us plan for our recovery, as well as update existing plans to bring them into the context of our disaster. And we've added $2 million to the multifamily construction program, just to put more emphasis on our dedication to housing. So that brings us to these allocations. $31 million for housing, $125 for infrastructure, $52 for economic revitalization. We can get into some of the further details on this, and I'm not going to go too long on this because I feel like we've all already seen what's in there, but just want to highlight some feedback that we heard on the housing program. One key thing we heard was HUD requires us to invest most of our funds to benefit low to moderate income folks, so that's 80% AMI or less. We heard from our community that we should be deliberate and go even further and make sure that we're providing deeper affordability in our housing investments. We heard an emphasis on home ownership as well, and with multifamily funding, we heard a need to have missing middle funding options for smaller scale projects. So where you see the red squares as I go forward, that's where we've changed in allocation. So our multifamily housing construction program, we added $2 million there. This is a program that provides gap funding for new construction as well as significant rehabilitation. We lowered the minimum award under this program from $1 million per project to $500,000 per project. It widens our ability to invest in smaller projects that might not necessarily need a full $1 million, but this kind of just broadens our capability to invest in smaller projects. And then we also added some language in our plan for partner selection to put emphasis on partners who will prioritize deeper affordability. Some infrastructure feedback that we heard: water. is one of the biggest things, as well as sustainability and resilience. The need for stormwater improvements was loud, and the strong emphasis for nature-based solutions to flood management was also spoken quite frequently as well. Nothing really changed in our infrastructure program, except that we moved $5 million from there, with that being our largest portion, least marginal cost to move from there to other programs. That's why we chose to move $5 million from infrastructure to others. But this infrastructure program has a lot of opportunity for water system improvements, stormwater management, parks and rec, and arts and cultural facilities, affordable housing infrastructure to help us be able to provide the groundwork for affordable housing construction, and commercial district revitalization and emergency sheltering. Emergency sheltering is included in our infrastructure program. Under HUD's world, shelter is not really a housing thing because it's not where someone has a residence. It's really a service that's provided. So emergency sheltering is included in our infrastructure program. Economic revitalization, we heard from our community that we needed to put a bigger portion of funding to small business investments and grants. We needed to plan for arts and cultural businesses as well. And a need for economic diversification was emphasized too. So we've heard all these things, and as part of our economic recovery program, we did add $2 million to the small business support program to be able to respond to that need in our community that we needed to provide further support for our small businesses. So that increases that economic revitalization overall bucket to $52 million. Our public services program, this is a $2 million program. We didn't change anything here from the draft to this final plan, but this is to provide wraparound services to reduce impediments to accessing housing resources as well as workforce development resources. Planning was also something that we heard loud and clear too, that we needed to be sure that we're investing in our planning efforts and updating our plans, as well as planning for community connectivity and resiliency. Our residents are particularly concerned with flood mitigation and fire mitigation. So we added $500,000 each to these two subcategories to update existing plans as well as to long-term recovery planning. And we added some language in our long-term recovery planning for community connectivity and resiliency planning. So again, each of those was increased by $500,000 in response to public comment. A reminder that with this program, we have a $29 million set aside that kind of works behind the scenes for mitigation investments. These are investments that are intended to make us more resilient to future disasters and to make future events less costly to us. So this is woven into our housing programs, our infrastructure program, economic recovery. We have a fairly robust section on mitigation in our action plan that I encourage y'all to, if y'all haven't had a chance to look at, it's got some really great strategies that we'll be implementing throughout this plan. I want to mention quickly that during the process of our drafting of this plan, even after it was out for public comment, the Department of Housing and Urban Development came out with new guidance for us to abide by. It required us to remove a couple of sections and some language in the plan to align with some new priorities that have come from the department. So we've changed our plan to align with that, and we have every expectation that we're going to be in compliance with the new guidance. I'll also mention that with the new guidance, grantees were given a 60-day extension on their deadline to submit their action plans. Our original deadline was April 21st. We're still before you tonight. We've chosen not to take them up on their extension. I don't think we want to waste any more time and we want to get to work. Again, our key takeaways, we're working in concert with other resources. This $225 million came to us back in January. We've received a lot of great comment from our community. It's been the most collaborative process I've ever been a part of, and I'm honored to work with the great folks here at the city to brought this plan before you now. This is the end of the beginning, right? This is a paper document. Now begins the work. And we're very serious about stewardship. Stewardship is something that I've emphasized throughout our community engagement process, is that whatever we do, we keep stewardship front of mind, because these are not City of Asheville dollars, these are American taxpayer dollars that have come to help us recover, and we have to be responsible with them. And we're right now starting to put together our plan for being responsible stewards for these funds so that we can implement them for our community's recovery in the long term. Appreciate y'all. take any questions. Thank you.
One of the things that I got a lot of questions about is, who's that guy doing the input, that James guy? And I was like, oh, James Shelton? And I heard great feedback, and I witnessed your listening skills, your empathy, because taking us back to those early days of Helene was meant revisiting trauma. And so I saw that compassion that you brought to the table as a neighbor who also is a survivor of Helene. I just wanted to thank you and shine some sunshine on you for that.
Thank you.
When you're getting stopped at the bus stop about it, it's like kind of exciting that people care about this, and I think you brought that care. It's unsurprising to me that food security was a top priority for our neighbors. Back in 2021 at the council retreat, my colleague, Councilmember Smith, joined me in pushing for adding neighborhood resiliency to our city council goals, and she said something about resilience hubs, and I was like, what even is that? What a joy to have to look that up and learn. It is something that we all did. It's places in your neighborhood. It can be a spot on your street, a library, a place where you share food and resources. We shared information. We had places where the Wine to Water had those cubes where you could take water out of the creek and filter it so you could drink it. It could look like community centers, faith community spaces that have solar with battery backup so that we can have emergency response at the neighborhood level. And I don't see it explicitly named in our plan, but I hear the threads of it in the input. And so our plan is kind of vague because we need to move quickly and we have very specific goals. But as I've been reviewing the plan again today, including the comments, I'm hearing those threads. So if you're like, what even is a resilience hub? It's the thing you were doing right after Helene, when there was no government response yet, you were filling the gap. But I definitely suggest folks looking it up. I've also been holding on to this idea that 1.1 billion in needs assessment is just kind of a hard number to wrap your mind around. So I've been boiling it down to, in my mind, it's like trying to pay $1,100 in rent when you have $225 in hand, and we don't even have $225 in hand yet. So it's not enough, and yet it seems like a lot. So I know we're not getting into the weeds, but among the plans that we have in our community is the Climate Justice Initiative and Plan. It shows our vulnerability to not just flooding and wildfires, but also to landslides. And what I heard from the robust engagement through that plan was, Kim, please don't let this be a plan that sits on a shelf. Please bring real dollars to get this work done. It is incredibly hard to know and try to articulate the threats, the existential crisis of climate change when someone's daily apocalypse is being able to keep a roof over their heads and keep their kids fed. So we can shore up those disparities in our community every day and have opportunities to use these resilience hubs in multiple ways. So I just wanted to name thank you to the community who's given this input. Thank you to James for compiling it. And I'm excited to move us to this next step.
I do have a couple of questions, just process-wise. In the housing, I know 50% AMI, it looked like those partnership piece. So once we get into the weeds, a developer comes in, they're like, hey, we need X amount of dollars to fill that gap, then we can negotiate with them on the affordability of the housing, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I know childcare has been a big thing that I've been hearing about. I know when I speak to folks who are trying to work here or companies who are trying to bring jobs here, one of the big things that they ask is, what are the housing affordability and what's your childcare look like? And it seems like childcare could go under that workforce development piece, or do we not think it's childcare at all, or is that?
The one mention that we have of childcare is the provision for childcare assistance within our public services program. So that's to help reduce barriers for folks to access the workforce development program, to get certifications, become part of the recovery. One of the difficult things with funding childcare or any type of educational type facility is the ongoing operational costs. These are one-time dollars. So we have to consider the types of investments that we make. It's usually a best practice with these types of funds to make the capital investment. So that's, I think, reflected in our plan. though we do recognize that the childcare need is significant.
So you're saying if a father who's a single father wants to go back to trade school and enter the workforce as something different, then during the time that he's in school, he may have some assistance with his childcare.
Yes, we've provided funding in our plan that will allow us to provide that type of assistance, likely through a subrecipient organization. That's typically how our programs will be implemented, is to partner with organizations who do childcare really well, organizations that do housing development really well. So yes, to answer your question, that's certainly within the opportunity of our plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James, oh, go ahead.
I had a conversation with a gentleman who asked me not to forget about the gig community. And he stated that because they're not brick and mortar, then they would not qualify for the small business support program. Could you clarify that? Do they not qualify?
I'm sorry, did you say gig?
Gig community?
Gig community.
Yeah, the gig economy.
Yeah.
Busters, people who are not brick and mortar.
It's difficult with this program because HUD typically wants to see the thing that they're investing in. Because you're making a capital investment usually in something that's going to generate either more job opportunities or is going to bring services to a low-income community. There's certainly opportunity for that. I'm not going to say that a gig type of job or a gig type business would be excluded. They certainly would be eligible to apply for our small business support program. Gig work is not excluded, but it would have to fit within the framework of the HUD requirements.
Well, and just to echo that, we would have to think about how we work with our partners, right? Because in the existing grants that we've seen for small businesses, those type of employers have been left out. You need to have more than 2 employees. You need to have it in business longer. So I think we would really want to look to the program partners and what the criteria are, because that I have heard that consistently of if you are a sole entrepreneur, the nearly $65 million of grant dollars that has come in the community so far has left a lot of our workers and businesses out. So I hope that when we dig into, I assume that when it gets to the point of finding a partner to spend that money, it'll come back across our dais and we'll talk about it then, but I want to hold that too, Councilwoman.
James, no, go ahead, finish.
But I was going to launch it, but you on deck.
Just
Your
quick
turn.
question. I notice our language it's a little adaptive through various meetings. Are we saying these funds, it is required to only use them as capital projects? Or are we saying it is best practice, but in fact, some of these monies could go to operational or one-time expenses or,
It's best practice, and it's very difficult to make investments into businesses that are strictly for operational costs. Giving a grant through HUD programs can be fairly stringent. We're actually working through, y'all remember back in the fall, we stood up a business grant program with our regular CDBG entitlement. We're going back around right now and making sure we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's as far as the HUD compliance on that. We're very confident that it's a very successful program with putting resources out there, but we have to document very clearly how those funds were used to retain jobs and create new jobs.
Which isn't capital though.
Which is not capital, because we categorize those funds as emergency grant payments, not necessarily for disaster recovery investment. We were able to move them fairly quickly under an urgent need categorization.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna chime in because this feels like a really momentous occasion. I've never been at a table where we're proposing $250 million to make our city whole and better and move forward. So I just feel really grateful for all the community members that put time into this, all the staff that put time into this. The plan is robust. Resilience hubs are called out, Kim, so don't worry, those are definitely in here. Really explicitly, actually, in a couple places, which I think is really necessary. I also think, to your point, Councilwoman Roney, this isn't enough. And we need to go a lot further. And I was really honored to join a group of 13 other municipalities to DC 2 weeks ago. We met with the director of FEMA, and we met with the White House, which was a very interesting experience, and our congressional delegation and our senators, and it very much was a united bipartisan group saying, this is not enough, we need to go forward. And very much hearing from these other municipalities, we're very fortunate that we are getting a direct allocation. We're gonna work directly with our staff and our community, and our neighbors aren't. They're gonna work with the state, and I think that'll be a great partnership, but we're very fortunate in the recovery. And as the hub of our region, I think we need to really take it very seriously that all of the investments we do directly for our citizens ripple into our further community as the housing hub and as the economic hub. So I'll keep fighting for more money. I think our next chance will really be this coming fall with a supplemental disaster plan if that comes together. So welcome everybody to keep remembering that we can go back and we need to keep asking for more. And I'm just so knowing that we're going to get this direct allocation puts me at ease in a very sad and unsettling time in our recovery. We still have so far to go, but this is such a powerful, early compared to other disasters step for us to really move forward. And I just am really proud of the work y'all have done. I'm excited to support this tonight.
I'll share a little more public, positive feedback. I know in my work
We're gonna let
sessions.
James sit, you just.
Sorry.
And
yeah,
we
you can
have,
sit.
we actually have 4 speakers too, so if this isn't everyone's last chance to talk.
No, it's just a little gratitude, because I know in the kind of pre-meetings around this, I was expressing some concern around Helene hadn't really destroyed apartment complexes across the city, but we were going to reinvest in multifamily, and I was concerned about the single-family home. So integrating the state's funding like you did in those few slides in the beginning was very helpful to me understanding the much bigger picture of how our residents are going to get their homes fixed. So just a little positive feedback for layering that in. Thank you.
Okay, if why don't we do this? Hold on one second, I gotta get to our.
Got 4.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing staff to submit the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for review and approval?
So moved. This is Sage.
All right, do we have a second? We have a second. All right, we thank you very much, council. We have,
Mayor,
different-
excuse us, could you tell us who gave that second?
we have 4 people signed up to speak under this item. Everyone, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please watch the lights on the lectern and the buzzing noise. The first person signed up to speak is Rachel Cohen. And if you are in favor of the things that are about to happen, you just give us a little wave, because we don't have clapping or snapping. If you don't like it, I mean, you could, if you really want to tell us you don't like it, give us a thumbs up. And you can move that microphone however you need to.
Great. Hello, my name is Rachel, and I am here on behalf of Sunrise Movement WNC, a youth-led movement dedicated to fighting to stop the climate crisis. This body declared a climate emergency in 2020. Please just take a moment and ask yourself, have I acted with the urgency that this emergency demands? I won't ask you to share your answers out loud, but I do hope you'll reflect on them honestly. In that emergency declaration, you pledged a mobilization to end citywide greenhouse gas emissions so we can reach 100% renewable energy by 2042. Now, you did hedge by saying that you'd act if met with all financial assistance required. Well, we have good news. With this CDBG-DR grant, we now have financing for this purpose. This brings me to our grant comments, which you've all received earlier today via email. The bottom line is that we must use these funds to reduce emissions and protect our community from the climate crisis. To name just a couple of examples, 1, we need to rapidly expand renewable energy. All new housing built with grant funds should have renewable energy generation and storage capacity. To make our energy infrastructure more resilient, we must also invest in renewable energy on a large scale in commercial and industrial settings. 2, We have to improve transportation since it's one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. Public transit is key because it decreases the use of energy inefficient private vehicles and helps make it more affordable for folks to live and work in this community. We should add new bus routes, double the frequency of service, and buy more electric buses. This is what the community wants. I have here 178 enthusiastic supporters who have signed on to these comments to Build Back Greener. As you approve the grant action plan and disperse funds, we urge you, please, to prioritize climate resilience. We need you to fight the climate crisis like our lives depend on it, because they do. Please be the forward-thinking leaders that we need. In this moment of crisis, this grant is an incredible opportunity for you to keep your promise that you made in the Climate Emergency Declaration and rebuild for climate resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michael Crawford.
Hello, thank you for taking my comments today. Just as a community member, I wanted to come before you and express my deepest gratitude to James Shelton and the rest of the team for putting together this CDBG-DR draft plan. This was my first experience engaging in local government, and I think that they have done an absolutely incredible job. It has inspired me and motivated me to continue to be a part of local government and be a more engaged citizen. Just seeing how well they engage with the community, I think they have set an unreasonable precedent for my expectations going forward. Within the plan, I was struck by how thoughtful and intentional their approach to development within the community was, and that extended to their approach to the feedback sessions, which I attended all three. I appreciate the plan's focus on long-term investment and economic recovery so that Asheville can come out of this disaster even stronger than before. The interwoven mitigation strategies, the creative and savvy use of double dipping of funds so that each dollar can be used to benefit not just one, but two or even all three of the funding goals and categories, I think is absolutely beautiful. And I am particularly supportive of the funding for housing development and affordable housing. And I hope that in implementation of this plan that we mirror the state's funding goals towards affordable housing ownership. I do see that in the community feedback. I saw it at all the meetings and I see it in the plan. And so I want to just speak to encourage and support that. This money continues to build on the momentum of the city council meeting several weeks ago where you all started to make momentum towards affordable housing really truly possible here in our community. And I hope that that continues. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy Harris.
Some 40 years later, I'm back. My name is Roy Harris, and I stay on Bartlett Street. I wasn't going to make a comment tonight or say anything because Mr. Shelton has explained it in perfect, not details, but I just want to say thank you, Mr. Shelton, because if I remember right, he didn't piss anybody off.
Wow.
Now, some people have disagreed with him on what the plan should be and all of that, but he's one of our stars, and he's going to be a star. So I just want to say thank you. But since I'm a storyteller, let me give you a quick story. 57 years ago, as I was headed off to college, I lived with my maternal grandparents. They were old. My grandfather was starting to have dementia, And so I just went there to stay with them. And of course, they encouraged me to go off to college. But my job in living with them was feed the pigs. And so in feeding the pigs, on a good day, we had a can of corn. On a bad feeding day, we had some vegetables that were no more good. On a really bad feeding day, we had what we call the slop. And that is food that was taken, you rake off your plate or when you're cooking and all of that. So my job was to feed them. And to feed them, what I would have to do is go out on the back steps of our house, little farmhouse, and holler, suey, suey. The pigs knew that sound. We were about to be fed. And so they would come rushing from the pasture, rushing up to the house into what we call the pig trough. Now, being a teenager, I would rush out there, put all the food in the trough, go back in the house, and let them fend for themselves. But after doing that a couple of times, I realized the ones that were old, the young pigs, were the last one to get to the food trough. And so with them being the last ones, a lot of times, it was all gone. And when I would come out to go to school on the school bus and everything, they'd be looking at me. What happened with me? Why you didn't take care of me? So as we go forward, one of the things is I want to guard you against is there's feeding troughs all over Asheville now. So.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Sorry. You know, I've never had to operate the buzzer, but apparently it's harder than it looks.
I feel like you should try it.
I really. Yeah. Okay, but Mr. Harris, I think we were getting the point of your story, though, just in conclusion. No, the next person signed up to speak is Paige Huziak.
Hey, I'd just like to emphasize Sunrise Movement's comments. I think that in some ways we're kind of fortunate that the same ways to be more resilient moving forward are the same ways to reduce our impact on the climate and hopefully reduce how frequently these kind of natural disasters do occur. I'd also like to point out that these resiliency hubs would be enhanced by having more mixed-use zoning. We all know in those first few days after Helene, we were not driving around. We were having to walk everywhere that we needed to go, and so car-dependent neighborhoods are just not going to have these resiliency hubs in the way that neighborhoods that are within walking distance of businesses and churches and other public spaces are. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment on this item. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments before we vote? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Thank you, James.
Yeah, great comments.
Jeez,
Dr.
James, you're almost
Raising the
at
bar.
Clay Chandler status around here. Lord. Okay, now we're gonna do our fees and charges manual. Lindsay Spangler, who deserves the same praise for her riveting financial outlook.
Keep your
Riveting
expectations low.
presentation.
I am not James. Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay Spangler, the budget manager for the city of Asheville, and I'm joined today by Tony McDowell, finance director, and I believe we also have David Melton, water director, in case there are any questions. All right, fees and charges. So every year, as part of the budget process, we come to council around this time to bring forward any recommended changes to the fees and charges for the city. We do it a little bit earlier than the rest of the budget so that we can give everyone enough time to react and make sure that they're taking their fees and charges for next year into account as they are going to start in July. So in terms of what it looks like for the city's revenue, for the general fund, it's a pretty small portion, but it is a very major source for the enterprise funds for your parking, your civic center, water, etc. And due to the financial impact that we've had from Tropical Storm Helene, we've tried to keep the impacts minimal this year. But we are recommending 2 changes to the fees and charges manual. The first is a water fee increase, and that is year 2 of a 3-year phase-in that we initiated last year. And there's also a small proposal for a fee to rent the new Memorial Field track. So, as I mentioned, for the general fund, not a large portion, but definitely significant. You'll see that blue segment there. Fees and charges make up about 11.8% of our revenue. For enterprise funds, you can see here that it's about 71%, so pretty significant amount. All right, so I'm going to talk about the proposed increases to the water fees. So just a little bit of a recap from the past year. During last year's budget process, there was a cost of service study that we brought to everyone. Basically, this analyzed the cost of running the service of the water service by function area, took a look at the rate structure, and made some recommendations for how to phase things in over a multi-year period. We talked about this in multiple policy, finance, and HR committees last year. And eventually, it was recommended to adopt a 3-year phase-in approach, which we decided would be the most efficient way to do this, while also being able to continue with the Waters Capital Program and give everyone a little bit of a runway in order to get to the full implementation. And so last year, we adopted year 1 of the 3-year rate adjustment, and now we're talking about year 2. Some more findings from that study, just for everyone's awareness. One finding from the study was that it just wasn't feasible to not increase rates and also be able to fund Water's 5-year capital program. At the time, we had estimated that the 5-year program would cost about $240 million. And of course, that was before Helene, so quite a different world, but the needs are only greater today. And secondly, there were a lot of equity and cost of service implications that came out of this. So the study found that basically residential payers were paying more as a percentage than the other types of ratepayers, such as commercial, manufacturing, and wholesale. And so what you'll see in this proposal is that the rates for commercial, manufacturing, and wholesale customers are going to increase more than those at the residential level. All right, so as I mentioned, last year we did the first year of this, and we were able to do a lot with that money. So we've issued $26.9 million in water revenue bonds, which was for the meter replacement project, which is ongoing and I think over halfway done at this point, or about halfway done. We also increased PAYGO capital funding by $2.7 million for some infrastructure replacement projects. We're also able to hire a few people, which was really key to service and operations. So we added a project manager to design and oversee capital projects. Got a water communication specialist, which was very key to have during Helene. And also added 4 new positions for the Southern District crew to improve response times for emergency water main breaks.
Wait, so our changes last year gave us clay.
Okay, but could you imagine if we had not had these plans?
Oh, yeah,
Where
that
we
was
would've
part
been?
of our 2020, out of the 2022 water.
Does he need more
I'm so thankful.
We just like to keep reflecting on that. It'll
I'm
never
not
get
Clay.
old.
I'm not James, and I'm not Clay.
Well, you're gonna earn your marks. You already have.
All right, so to add to the importance of continuing with these rate adjustments, besides giving us clay, we also have a lot of large-scale projects that are upcoming, including a $12.5 million water treatment plant rehab project, $75 million in water treatment plant enhancements, and $40 million for the Mills River Expansion Phase 3 project. Another important set we need to mention is that this will have a big impact on how rating agencies look at the city. So all of our debt is rated by these rating agencies, and specifically S&P, which is one of those rating agencies, has put water on a credit watch with negative implications. They're really watching this discussion tonight very closely to make sure that we're able to have enough in our belt, under our belt, so that we can move forward with our planned improvements and service. So as we all know, if they were to end up downgrading us, that would lead to all of our capital projects being more expensive in the long run. And lastly, we also wanted to mention that when we did the post-Helene survey of the community, we got about 7,000 respondents to that, and strengthening infrastructure was by far the top concern that everyone mentioned in that survey. So important community consideration as well. So here's a look at the numbers. So there's two different sides here that show the two different types of parts of your bill that would be going up. So on the left, you have the base charge. And again, everyone's bill is bi-monthly. So here's what your bill looks like this month, this year, FY25 versus next year. And you can see that everyone's gonna get a 7.5% increase to that bill. On the right, you'll see the volumetric change. So that's per 100 cubic feet. And you'll see that residential and irrigation has a 7.5 increase. But then once you get towards the higher users, the commercial, manufacturing, wholesale, those numbers are going to go up more significantly. And here's a look at what it's just another way to see what your typical bill might look like. You can see 25, 26, and the change basically right there. And this is, sorry, to be clearer, this is based on a typical bi-monthly usage for everyone. So it estimates like what you might use if you're residential or commercial or manufacturing, and then what that would mean for your bill.
And it's monthly or bi-monthly?
Yeah.
And this is just the usage portion. People are looking at this going, my water bill is so much bigger than that, but that's because there's a lot of other things on the water bill.
Right, yes. So here's just another way to look at that information. The difference in your bi-monthly bill is seen in that middle column. So that's how much your bi-monthly bill would increase every billing period, leading to that last column, which shows you what your annual picture would look like. That's the increase that you would see. All right, well, we also have a small fee change for Parks and Recreation. The new track was just completed at Memorial Stadium, and so in order to allow the Parks Department to better manage that track, they're requesting a fee of $15 an hour to rent it, which is not expected to lead to a huge windfall in revenue. It's just $1,500 additional for the year, but it just helps the Parks Department to remain consistent with the way it manages its other facilities, and kind of helps with better utilization of the facility.
And I'll just highlight, I think this is kind of a weird slide because the only reason it's being highlighted is because in the list of fees and charges that the city levies, other than the water fees, there's no recommended changes this year. And this is technically a new fee, but we have always charged fees associated with renting spaces in our parks, whether it's a picnic shelter or whatever the case may be. And that's still happening. Those fees aren't changing. We're just highlighting this one because it's technically new, because the track is new.
That's correct, yeah. The manual is very specific about what can be charged. So if there's a new facility, you have to add a specific fee for it. All right, any questions on either parks or water? All right, that's all I got. Back to the key takeaways. Thanks.
So we're really just continuing last year's water increase that we pledged, and we're adding the $15 track fee. I move to approve an ordinance amending the fees and charges manual for fiscal year 2025, 2026.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. We don't have anyone signed up to speak under this item. And again, it'll be rolled into the budget, so we'll technically be voting on it again. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor for the boards and commissions part of our agenda.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. We have two quasi-judicial boards that we need to make appointments for. Those are the Board of Adjustment and the Civil Service Board. There's one vacancy for the Board of Adjustment as an alternate member. We have two applications. The first is Joseph Fitzgerald. Mr. Fitzgerald worked in construction for over 30 years and has extensive experience in historical preservation and restoration. And the second is Lieutenant Colonel James Warnall Jr. He's retired from the Air Force where he served as an Inspector General. I'll point out that staff and the chair have recommended James Warnall. I think we set a precedent last time that when we had more applications than seats, we just did kind of a round robin of who would be supported. So are you okay starting with that? Okay, so we'll start with you, Bo.
A motion for Mr. James Warnall.
Well, I don't know that it's a motion, I think.
We're just voting, we're just.
James
yeah.
Warnall.
Okay.
James Warnell.
I support the staff and chair recommended James Warnall.
Same, Warnall.
Okay, Warnall.
James Warnall.
James Warnall. Okay. That's unanimous, Maggie, for James Warnall for. Up next, we have the Civil Service Board. There are two vacancies.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor,
Yep, sorry.
I apologize for this, but I do think we need an
Need a
actual
motion.
vote for that. We didn't actually take a motion or a second.
Can I get a
Wait a
motion
second.
for the
Nominate that.
appointment of James Warnall to the Board? of
I move.
Adjustment?
This is Sage, I'll move.
Is there a second?
Both second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Brad. Up next is the Civil Service Board, two vacancies here. I'll point out that Mr. Warnold also applied for that, but typically we don't. Yeah, he did.
It's very.
There are two current members who are eligible and willing to be reappointed. Those are the Chair, Carol Goins, and Carter Webb. So for this one, I'll happily accept or entertain a motion to reappoint Chair Carol Goins to the board.
Second.
Kim?
It's a tie for second.
Wait, is that a reappointment
actually,
of her or a
Normally the vice
reappointment
mayor
to
makes the
chair?
motion and another seconds it in the past, but this is your
But we don't have a
process.
board, so really I need a motion
Right.
and a second.
May I get a clarifying?
They're both eligible for reappointment.
Right, but you said board chair. Do we also need to vote for the chair
I'm gonna
separately?
do that after. we-
Okay, so
Yes.
you said board chair, but you just mean to reappoint her? Okay,
Yes.
just making sure I understood.
Yes.
So if Bo, you have the motion, then I'm happy to second.
Yes, I make a motion to reappoint Goins.
Okay, and then Kim second?
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the second applicant is Carter Webb. He's also eligible for reappointment. Is there a motion to reappoint Carter Webb?
I move to reappoint Carter Webb.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So at this time, we'll consider the chair, the appointment of the chair of the board. Carol Goins is the current chair and has expressed interest in remaining chair.
I'll make a motion to appoint Ms. Carol Goins to Chair of the Civil Service Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Turn it back over to you now.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we have now general public comment. General public comment, people, if you will, I'll call your name and you'll have 3 minutes to speak unless you are a group that's ceding your time to a single speaker. to do that, you have to be here to cede your time, but then your single speaker will have up to 10 minutes. So the first person signed up to speak under the 3-minute category is Dustin Peslin.
Yes, hello, good evening. My name is Dustin, and I'm with the Hope Through the Storm initiative that is coming to Asheville this summer. It's going to be June 1st through June 7th, and I just wanted to share a little bit more information about that event, just so that you're all familiar, and then I have a couple things to offer to you as well. It's going to be the first 4 days are going to be reconstructive efforts in Swannanoa. And we will also have a mobile medical unit those first 4 days. And then from June 4th through 6th, it's going to be at the Harris Convention Center here in downtown Asheville. And it's going to be a free mega clinic. We estimate between 1,700 and 2,000 people to attend that event. And we're going to be offering approximately $10 to $15 million worth of free medical care. And really just wanting to help the community after everything that they've been through this year. Services include free dental care, such as root canals, crowns, fillings, extractions, vision care, free glasses, free examinations. We're going to be offering free medical services, including free medications up to a 60-day supply, minor surgical procedures under local anesthesia, x-rays, orthopedics, pediatrics, primary care, mental health, including evaluations and counseling, lifestyle health, medical, massage, diet, also clothing and food distribution, 2 free healthy meals per day, plus free clothing, shoes, basic necessities, and also spiritual health. We'll provide chaplaincy services, prayer, literature, counseling, as well as spiritual health and wellness lectures. We work with the local licensing from Public Health Department as well as the state licensure. And all providers are appropriately licensed. We are working with the county commissioners and city officials to ensure all appropriate permits and licensures are in place. Of course, we have all our insurance covered. And we're partnering with local medical, dental, and vision experts as well as specialists to ensure that patients have appropriate follow-up care after the event as well. And so that is what we're offering. Again, it's called Hope Through the Storm. It's coming to this area June 1st through 7th. And I have just a couple of requests for all of you. And I wanted to see if there's any way we could have assistance in notifying potential volunteers in this community. We really want to serve as many people as possible. And so if people do want to volunteer, they can go to libertyandhealth.org or also freemegaclinics.org.
Thank you.
And lastly, I just want to invite you all to the final event on the 7th, which is going to be a gratitude session for the mayor and all of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And if you can email city staff to forward to us or email us any of the information, that would be great. Thank you.
Can I leave one?
You'll need to go over here then. You don't want to get tackled. There. Okay. Rachel Murdaugh. Are you trying to get it to zoom in? Is that what you're trying to do?
I can see it.
Well, your all's eyes are, yeah. I'm like, wait. Now I can see it.
Hello, council members. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Rachel Murdaugh, and I'm here representing the Western North Carolina chapter of the American Institute of Architects, as well as Citizens Coalition of West Asheville. In light of the removal of the I-26 connector from tonight's agenda, we would like to remind Council that the issue of the proposed overpass above Patton Avenue matters to many people in Asheville. Citizens Coalition petition to Council has lengthened to include more than 250 names and continues to grow each day. In upcoming weeks, we will host community meetings and representatives from our organizations will attend downtown after 5 to inform and engage with the public. Additionally, we are working to support neighborhood associations as they meet with NCDOT to discuss the proposed changes to the connector's design, providing them with the information they need to enter into these discussions as educated citizens backed by a full understanding of their rights under NEPA law. We would also like to underscore what Asheville stands to gain by maintaining alternate 4B. An underpass below Patton Avenue would prioritize the health and well-being of residents by increasing pedestrian and bicycle-friendly routes between downtown and West Asheville, and by reducing traffic noise in surrounding neighborhoods. Additionally, the underpass would allow Asheville to make the most of the buildable property within city limits, while an overpass at Patton Avenue would have the opposite effect, dropping property values and limiting development for decades. Ultimately, the connector needs to integrate into a developing urban area and a fast-growing city. Asheville needs these acres for developments that are sorely needed now and will remain necessary in the future, including housing and commerce. This connector will likely outlast all of us. It is a major investment, $1.2 billion. Now is the time to get it right because we may never get another chance at this. And time is running short. We have a limited window of time to address this with NCDOT. To that end, we need Council's help to push NCDOT to fulfill NEPA regulation requirements that are owed to Asheville citizens, including the requirement to utilize an interdisciplinary approach. And we need your help to push them to provide a cost breakdown of the bid, as well as value engineering options, with the goal of making the underpass an attainable design. We appreciate your public service, and we all want what is best for our city. So we urge you to join us in advocating for a design solution that is equal to or better than the least environmentally destructive alternative, namely the option included in NCDOT's RFP, alternate 4B, which routed I-26 below Patton. Together, we can prioritize the well-being of Asheville residents and the livability of our city for many generations to come. These are our recommended actions for Council to take to ask of NCDOT.
What's updated EIS?
That's the economic or environmental impact statement.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Did you see that alert? Emma Road's closed due to a mudslide. Okay, it was.
Your phone alert.
Well, now you all know. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen McNeil.
Hello, council members and mayor and staff. My name is Karen McNeil. I, along with other members of the Urban Forestry Commission, past and present, have written an open letter we would like to share with you this evening. Before I read the letter, I would like to preface it by stating a section of UFC's mission. The purpose of this chapter is to regulate the planting of new trees and shrubbery, to vigorously encourage the protection of existing trees and shrubbery, including their root systems, to regulate the preservation, replacement, and indiscriminate removal of trees, and to establish procedures for fulfilling these purposes. In addition to keeping our mission in mind, we request that you receive this letter knowing the intention is to live up to our mission while thinking ahead as to how we can better respond to further crises like Helene with an effective plan in place. The letter reads, "It has been nearly 7 months since Helene caused unimaginable damage to Asheville and surrounding communities, much of that damage to trees and tree-related. Further damage is imminent since members of Asheville City Council voted to reduce the minimum cottage cluster units from 5 to 2 in Chapter 7, Section 19, thereby removing any protection for these properties by our tree canopy ordinance. In addition, the City Council approved changes to flag lot construction without any corresponding ordinance change that would make the tree canopy preservation ordinance somehow applicable to single-family and duplex housing. Most recently, the Asheville Watchdog reported on more trees being removed from French Broad and Carrier Park by a contractor who is paid by the Army Corps of Engineers according to the volume of material hauled away. The collateral damage from Corps contractors could have been easily prevented if city staff had taken the opportunity to activate the Southern Urban Forestry strike teams in Asheville after Helene. This is a cadre of tree risk assessment experts specially trained for identifying, marking, and mapping trees after disasters to prevent unnecessary removals. Unfortunately, that request was never made. That was a very unfortunate mistake. The Southern Urban Forestry strike team is paid for through the State Forestry Agency Fire Compact and would not have cost the city a penny. This step to bring in strike teams must be included in Asheville's future storm recovery plans. The time of immediate emergency is past, and now a different, longer-term emergency is occurring to our urban forests. We cannot wait any longer for the city of Asheville to reinstate the Urban Forestry Commission without speaking out. There must be more accountability for decision-making. Decisions being made that further decrease our overall tree canopy, negatively affect Asheville's climate resilience, and compromise our community's public health. Asheville's Urban Forestry Commission needs to be reinstated with a concrete meeting date, staff reports on the debris removal that took out trees alongside riverside parks, any future debris removal projects that affect trees on public land, and public comment to reopen communication between the city and residents about the status and care of our urban forests. I signed off on this letter as Vice Chair of the Urban Forestry Commission, Chris DeFiore, Policy Chair of the Urban Forestry Commission, and Sharon Dietrich, a board-certified Master Arborist in Tree Risk Assessment, also signed off along with other past Urban Forestry members. Thank you.
Thank you. Nina Tovish.
Good evening, council members, city staff. I just wanted to add a postscript to the presentation you heard earlier from the Realignment Working Group. I was privileged and hope to continue to participate in the work of the Realignment Group. Almost 3 years we've been at this. Each of us has probably committed many hundreds of hours to meetings, to consultations, to analysis, to writing, to preparation. I stand in awe and gratitude to my fellow members of this working group. People who had no shortage of other things to do with their time, who chose to spend it in an effort to make the work of boards and commissions more efficient, more effective, and more empowering for the members of our community who serve on them. It gave me great hope that every board and commission can work together as effectively and with the support of city staff that we had as well to produce results that will serve the community and our city government. I hope that you will take the group's recommendations very seriously and that you will spend time and effort to create the systems, the policies, and the staff structure that will make it possible to move forward in the ways that we recommend. There are also a number of us who are willing to hang out for the long run, to follow the progress of this council and our city staff in implementing the recommendations. We're in favor of transparency and inclusion and participation, and we look forward to working with you on that. On another brief note, I would like to join the chorus commending the work of James Shelton and his staff. I was delighted to participate in one of the feedback events, and I have rarely participated in a group effort like that was as well run, as pleasant to participate in, and as clearly intentional and respectful as that one was. It was really great. And it bodes well if that's the way that we're going to implement the action plan. So thank you for that. Nina Tovish, have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Sonia Marcus.
Hi, Council. My name is Sonia Marcus, and I am a homeowner on Westwood Place near Hazel Mill Road. The recent changes that have been made to the I-26 connector project, including the Patton Avenue flyover and the widening of 240 through downtown, these changes and the way they have been brought forward fundamentally undermine the integrity of DOT's entire public input process over the last 25 years and will deprive this community of hard-won amenities that we deserve and saddle some of us with problems that we do not deserve. Today, I want to focus on neighborhood-level impacts of the Patton Avenue flyover, which relate to noise and air pollutants. Compared to an underpass, a highway overpass propagates noise over a much larger area due to its elevated position. Residents of Burton Street, Emma, and East-West Asheville will bear the brunt of this. Keep in mind that noise mitigation measures for overpasses are less effective and higher cost. Now let's talk about air pollution. Underpasses concentrate pollutants in the depressed area while overpasses disperse them in the neighborhood. This is the inhaler that I use every morning as a person who has been suffering from chronic asthma since childhood. Let me tell you about the documented health impacts of increased highway pollutants in the short and long term. Air pollutants from highway overpasses are strongly linked to asthma exacerbations, reduced lung growth in children, and the onset of new asthma cases. Children living near highways are especially vulnerable. Long-term exposure is associated with increased risks of hypertension, heart attacks, and other cardiovascular diseases. Chronic exposure has also been linked to higher stroke incidence due to its effects on blood pressure and vascular health, as well as an increased risk of lung cancer. Pregnant individuals exposed to high levels of traffic pollution face risks such as preterm births and low birth weight in infants. Where is the community impact analysis that DOT is required to provide? Why was this and other recent changes even necessary? Are additional mitigation measures being considered and factored into total project costs? The humans of East-West Asheville are not willing to be sacrificed to DOT's 11th hour project modifications. The city and people of Asheville have spent too much time, too much money, too much volunteer labor, and too much political capital to roll over at this juncture and concede on some of the most important elements of this design. We demand transparency around new I-26 connector project impacts, and we want full accountability around the process.
Thank you. Up next is David Moritz.
Hello, je suis Sarah Halimi. Almost exactly 8 years ago, on April 4th, 2017, Sarah Halimi, a 65-year-old Jewish woman and retired school teacher, was brutally murdered in her Paris apartment in an act of anti-Semitic violence that shocked the Jewish world. Her killer, Kobili Traore, a neighbor known to her family, broke into her home in the middle of the night, beat her for nearly an hour while screaming verses from the Quran and shouting Allahu Akbar, then threw her from her third-floor balcony. The motive was clear. Halimi was targeted because she was Jewish. But what followed was a second tragedy, not of violence, but of justice denied. Despite the clearly anti-Semitic nature of the crime, French authorities were slow to acknowledge it, and for months, the case was buried in silence. Then, in 2021, France's highest court ruled that Traore could not stand trial, claiming that his cannabis use before the murder rendered him not criminally responsible. How could a man who knowingly smoked weed, carried out a savage murder, and shouted anti-Semitic slogans be excused from justice? Many saw it as a chilling message that in France, the murder of a Jew, even with obvious hate as a motive, could go unpunished. Halimi's case was not isolated. It followed a horrifying pattern. Ilyan Halimi, tortured to death in 2006. The Jewish children and teacher murdered in Toulouse in 2012. the Hyper Cacher supermarket massacre in 2015, and Mireille Knoll, a Holocaust survivor murdered in 2018. Again and again, French Jews have been targeted, often with justice delayed or denied. Protests broke out across France and beyond, demanding legal reform and public recognition of anti-Semitism. The majority of those who participated were exclusively from Jewish communities. Sari Halimi was more than a victim. She was a mother, grandmother, a community member, and an educator. Her brutal murder and the failure to deliver justice stand as a painful reminder that anti-Semitism is not just about violence, but silence, denial, and the betrayal of law. May her memory be a blessing and her blood be avenged.
Thank you. Sharon Sumrall.
Hello, Mayor, Council Member Sharon Sumrall. First, I want to commend to the Realignment Working Group. I watched them for the 3 years doing work, popped in and out. It was amazing, all the work they did. It was heroic. So thank you all that are here for doing all that hard work. It was pretty amazing. So I am here because I'm worried as a past member of the Urban Forestry Commission and a past board member of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee that the Urban Forestry Commission is going to be downgraded in its position as a board and commission. We're all worried about it. So the council committee structure, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading on the PED, Municipal Climate Action Plan goals. We need green infrastructure in there, in big bold letters, somewhere under this, so that the transparency for the community. Now, for my past work on the Urban Forestry Commission, I get 1 million emails, what's going on. And because I'm not plugged in like I used to be, I have no idea, so I have to find you guys what's going on. And when I was on the Urban Forestry Commission, when we had capital projects, they came to us. When we had alternative compliance, they came to us. MSD came to us, Duke came to us, and they would say, we're gonna do this, so that we would know when trees were being taken down somewhere, why they were being taken down, and we would get all those emails and we'd say they're coming down because of this. So we do not have, as citizens anymore, a direct link to what's going on with our green infrastructure. And we have, I live on Bowcatcher Mountain. I don't know if anybody's been up there, but we're 2/3 down in trees. And people are taking trees down because they're frightened. They should be frightened. We've all got PTSD. I have PTSD. And they want to know whether it's steep slope or not, they're taking it down. And we need to protect what we have, tell people how to determine whether the trees are safe or not, and where they're going to go for this at the Urban Forestry Commission. Because that has always been the citizens' point to find out what's going on with the city. And so all of us have been on it, all the future people, all the past people were afraid that boards and commissions are going to be decentralized, not be part of the working people of Asheville, and they want to be informed. So I'm saying when you're sitting down here and you're looking at your council committee structure, remember the green infrastructure, remember boards and commissions. And thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Myers, and it looks like you've got 3 folks that are ceding their time to you. Rachel Cohen, could you just raise your hand, Rachel? Yes. And Joshua Jones. Thank you. And Micah Floyd. Yes, thank you. Okay, Maggie, will you help with the,
Sorry, Councilmember Sala, good evening. Nice to see you all. I did not give my slides in on time, so I'm going to try to make this work for you. Okay, great. This will work. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Myers. I'm another property owner.
you can just bend it if you want to.
Is that better?
Whatever works.
Okay. I am the chair of the East West Asheville Neighborhood Association. We represent the area between the French Broad River and the 240. We are a neighborhood literally defined by the presence of this highway. We are the neighborhood that will see the greatest impact of the new proposed Patton Avenue flyover, which is the overpass being discussed here today. or that has already been discussed here today to some extent. My aim really is to give you some visuals so that you can actually envision what it's like to live in this area and what it's going to be like when this very large arterial structure is constructed. From what we've heard, it's a done deal, but I'm here to implore you to think about standing with your neighbors, to not accept the narrative that this is a done deal, and think about what influence you actually have in the ability to shape the project and the impact on us, on my son, on my neighbors, on the people I love. So, here you go. This is the area in question. If you're not familiar, you can see, the 240, the 26, the current construction. Westwood Place is this street right here, and it is cut off. It used to connect on the other side of what is now the Westgate Plaza, but it is a very sharp turn on a very steep grade down to Hazel Mill Road, which connects to the Craven Connector right here, which is infrastructure that was put in place when the highway was built. It was, from what I hear, I wasn't there, it was never intended to be permanent infrastructure. It was like a side road, a construction road, an access point to building the Bowen Bridge. But that has become the main access point to our grocery store. It's how we get on the highway right now. It is extremely dangerous. The sidewalks are disconnected. You cannot walk to the grocery store. You cannot ride a bicycle to the grocery store. The other side of Hazel Mill Road, over here by Annie Street, is where the Patton Avenue flyover will launch from, where this major arterial structure will start. It will then stay aerial to the other side of the Asheville Racquet Club, so traveling over Resort Drive until the hill meets grade there, where the pool is currently, if you've been over there. So this is a very large structure. This isn't just a little dip over a roadway. It is what reminds me of these giant aerial structures in Los Angeles. I lived in California for a long time. Do you want to know what's underneath all of those structures? The ones in Oakland, California, the ones in Los Angeles? Massive tent villages. That's where homeless end up living because they have some shelter from the elements. Who's going to be the one responsible for the long-term maintenance of this facility? Is DOT going to be out there continually making sure that people are cared for? Are they going to be there to make sure that when these tent villages get set up, those people actually get into transitional housing? It's time for you all to speak up now, because this is going to be the burden that's put on you and this community for the foreseeable future if you don't. Okay, so when you travel down Westwood Place, or if you're traveling this way up Hazel Mill Road and you try to get to the neighborhood, you're often blinded by afternoon sun. This is west, right? So this very steep grade then meets a very blind corner and afternoon sun, and it is extremely dangerous. Councilmember Rooney might be able to attest this better than I, because she lives very near this intersection. And what I wonder is if we're going to go ahead and build this huge, monstrous aerial structure, if we're redesigning the whole highway system, why have we not looked at this intersection? Why have we not gone back to the parts of this project that were never done properly, never meant to be finalized, and say, well, you know what, if we're going to be impacting this community in this way, why are we not at least mitigating that impact by creating maybe a walkable, bikeable corridor to their grocery store, or to the French Broad River, where we've already invested in greenway infrastructure, and there's other businesses that we might frequent. I have more images. So this is an overturned truck. This is the second overturned truck that I saw on this road. I use this road every single day, but I'm only there for about 5 minutes at a time. I've witnessed 2 trucks jackknife in the last 7 years. I'm sure there have been more. I was mentioning the grade, you can't quite see it here, but when you're coming off of the highway, this is an extremely sharp turn, and the road is actually not wide enough to accommodate the turning radius of a truck this large. So they flip over. I sent you these photos already, and I do appreciate that someone from the city came out to patch the 2 most egregious potholes that ended up blowing a tire on a fire truck. As they were doing it, I happened to be driving past that day, and I asked, what should happen here long term? Because you guys come out and patch this roadway every single year. He said, I've worked for the city for 20 years. This road has never been resurfaced. I've heard that it's never been resurfaced because there's been some sort of confusion about who maintains this roadway. This and the Craven Connector. Is it NCDOT or is it the city? I beg you to negotiate then, if you're refining who actually maintains this roadway, and consider what a redesign of the roadway might look like at this juncture when we're considering a whole redesign of the entire highway structure. Also, please put us on the top of the priority list for resurfacing. Thank you. Okay. This is a little hard to see, but it's the best available map we have of the proposed Patton Avenue flyover. We would very much like to see some more detailed and refined plans. So I'm going to point out Westwood and the Hazel Mill corner for you. You can see exactly how sharp it is right here. You'll see these businesses or these properties. There's Annie Street, which I'll show you in a little bit. These are the light green properties are the parcels that are slated for acquisition for the project. You can see that right at the end of Westwood Place, these storage units are half slated for acquisition. I wonder if you might suggest to NCDOT that a few more of these buildings get acquired so that you might slightly adjust the turn at the corner of Westwood Place and Hazel Mill, and then change the grade down to the Craven connector so it is no longer a place where trucks overturn, that is constantly eroding, and that is not safe for pedestrians or bicyclists or the community. I started taking some photos and I didn't get them on the slide deck. I'm really sorry. But this is Annie Street from Resort Drive. So if you're coming out of the Asheville Racquet Club and you're looking over at Annie Street, which is slated to be the off-ramp for the 26 project, which will become the Asheville exit, this is Annie Street. So I'm going to show you another view of Annie Street on my phone because I didn't quite get it in the slide deck.
That works.
That works. Okay, so this is the former FedEx building, or the former FedEx parcel that is to be acquired and to be the launch space of the flyover, the overpass, if you want to call it that. These are fully grown trees. I appreciate that members of the Tree Commission were here to speak, because when they cut trees at the end of Vandalia for a development project that never happened, the noise impacts to the community became much, much more noticeable. When the leaves fall at the end of the year, we can hear the freeway like 10 times more. I wonder what's going to happen when they grade this hillside down to make that exit and then remove all of these trees to accommodate what is called a greenway. I'm calling it, until someone retrees this area, I'm not calling it a greenway, it's a bike path. But I shudder to think, with all the trees that we've lost in the storm, with all the noise that we've felt from the loss of those trees, from the noise that we feel from the trees that were felled at the end of Vandalia, gorgeous old oak trees for development, again, that has never happened. What is it going to sound like when they cut these full-grown trees down? And what is it going to sound like when they take this grade down? This is quite steep. There's no way that a freeway exit is going to be put alongside this. This is Hazel Mill, sorry, that's really hard to say, but this is Hazel Mill Road, right? And then there's going to be a freeway exit right here, and then the overpass right here. I have another image that you might be able to see here. What's it going to sound like to the neighbors that live, okay, immediately, like behind this fence? There's housing right here. And what's it going to sound like to the entire neighborhood that's up on the ridge line behind that, which is Westwood Place? I was canvassing this or walking this to get these photos the other day, and I noticed that a lot of the housing in this area is what you would call missing middle housing. Accessible bungalows, they were probably built in the 1920s. A lot of families live there. There was a man with his 2 children. I see them right up and down my street every day. They live immediately across from this project site. I appreciate Sonia's comments about asthma rate, heart disease, cancer, lung disease, all the things that we know accompany freeways. I feel badly that this freeway was built in the middle of our town in the first place. Let's not keep making the same mistakes. Please stand with us. Please use your voice and help us advocate to NCDOT to make this project better.
Thank you so much. Thank you. India Young.
I'm here to express my opposition to the proposed I-26 bypass flyover design that's already been discussed over Patton Avenue in West Asheville. Our family lives within sight of the current Patton Avenue, and this area of town needs a lot of love. Recent degradation has increased tremendously since the storm. So what we need in this area is smart development with ample green space, room for small businesses to grow, trees, sidewalks, and all those charming amenities that we spend money to enjoy in other towns. We do not need 12 lanes of a flyover superhighway depositing more air, noise, light pollution into historic West Asheville neighborhoods below. Urban infrastructure impacts the lives of residents daily, and prioritizing pedestrians over cars will ensure longevity in our community's future landscape. So we have a moment in time to make a smart decision to implement this citizen-approved walkable design, which would connect citizens and create more community, create opportunity for more economic draw, and better protection for human health and the environment. So let us look to other visionaries for inspiration who recognize development in harmony with the environment while providing opportunity for economic development. Frederick Olmsted comes to mind, and there are many more. Let us not think only of the present moment, but of the long-term positive impacts we can have when we spend our dollars smarter and with the consideration of future generations who will have to live with our choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert McHugh.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. As a resident and a builder, I realize the I-26 project is very complicated. However, I wonder how much a united City Hall, armed with the information from a concerted public input, could sway the outcome of the design. City Hall will have to deal with the negative features of what gets built for years to come, much more than the DOT. The DOT has not provided accurate, digestible maps of their plans, and I'd like City Hall to get behind this push to educate the public. I believe more public education and input is needed to get the best outcome for this monumental feature in our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we're not supposed to do back and forth, but just DOT has confirmed that they're going to do a public meeting on the 24th from 4 to 7 at the Renaissance. So that will be a time when they're bringing plans and materials and a time for back and forth engagement. So I look forward to being there with hopefully all of you.
That will be deja vu all over again. I believe they
At the Renaissance.
hosted these at the Renaissance previously, many years ago. We do have one final speaker tonight, Timber Berger.
Hey y'all, I'm Timber with the Sunrise Movement. I would like to congratulate and highlight Rachel's excellent comments from earlier. I don't have too much to add to that, but just had some thoughts while I was sitting here in this meeting and wanted to share them with y'all. Specifically about the plan, some thoughts that occurred to me is the importance in communicating what resources become available to people, what programs we have out there, and making sure that we actually connect them to the people. I think that can be a failure. Sometimes we've got these pots of money and people don't necessarily know about them or where they're going. So I wanted to highlight that. And another thought was, I don't know if the grant is appropriate for this, but considering conservation easements in our floodplains, on our ridgelines, in our watersheds, the importance in that in terms of managing stormwater. And related to that, and a lot of the folks talking from the urban forestry perspective, I'm really excited to see the progress that has been made in cleaning up our streams and waterways. We saw that horrific picture of the French Broad River Park, and I'm just kind of thinking about those recovery efforts, we've got a lot of nonprofits that are doing what they can. We've seen a lot of great progress being made by the Army Corps of Engineers. I was down at the mall the other day looking at this one, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that a cargo container isn't in the river anymore. And I saw some remediation efforts they had done, like putting down cording and sown with like winter rye. And I'm a landscaper, so I was like, well, okay, that's maybe a Band-Aid, but like, what are we thinking about in terms of creating natural buffers with native species, habitat, and then, last time I was here speaking, we were talking about invasive species. So like in that process, there also has to be a plan for long-term management going forward. So those were mostly just some thoughts that I had to consider as we go forward with our recovery. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, that concludes our agenda for this evening, and we are adjourned.